In the year 2014, deep within the northwest mountains of Vietnam, an experienced woodsman named VA ventured into the ancient forest, his trusted hunting dog trotting faithfully by his side. Villagers saw him walk past the familiar treeline, a confident stride in his step. But as the sun dipped below the horizon and shadows stretched like grasping fingers across the land, a chilling realization dawned. No one saw him come out. Days turned into a week, and a growing sense of dread prompted the formation of a search party. They pushed into the dense, silent woods, their calls echoing unanswered through the thick canopy. It was then that they found something that turned their blood to ice. There, lying on a bed of damp leaves, was Vu's bag, its contents untouched. A few feet away, his knife was stuck into the soft earth, and huddled beneath a gnarled root, they found his dog, trembling uncontrollably. The animal wasn't looking for its master. It was staring, fixated, at a specific patch of trees, its body language screaming of a terror that had taken place right there. It was as if something immense and unseen had been standing in that very spot only moments before. But of VA there was nothing. No footprints leading away from the site. No signs of a struggle. No broken branches. No blood. It was as if the forest floor had simply swallowed him whole, leaving behind only a profound and terrifying silence. The local elders, their faces etched with the wisdom of generations, whispered a name that sent shivers down everyone's spines. Ma Tran Lai An Kai Ri. The forest spirit took him. Almost exactly 1 year later, the same suffocating dread returned to the village. A teenager named Hai, full of youthful energy, went missing in the exact same stretch of ominous forest. He had been hiking with 2 of his closest friends, their laughter and chatter piercing the usual quiet of the woods. Feeling adventurous, Hai jogged a few meters ahead of the group, turned a sharp corner around a massive rock formation, and simply vanished from sight. His friends, thinking it was a joke, called out his name. When their calls were met with silence, a flicker of unease turned into a surge of panic. They sprinted after him, rounding the same corner just seconds later, but Hai was gone. All that remained was a single wet footprint pressed deeply into the mossy ground, just one, and it was facing not back towards the path but directly into the impenetrable darkness between the ancient trees. Another frantic search was launched, combing through every inch of the familiar yet suddenly menacing landscape. But once again they found nothing. No clues, no traces, no sign of the boy. Driven to desperation, Hai's grieving mother sought the counsel of a local shaman. The old man listened to her story, his eyes closed as if peering into another world. When he finally spoke, his words were a terrifying confirmation of her worst fears. "Your son didn't walk away," he said, his voice a low, somber whisper. "Something pulled him out of this world." For the villagers living on the forest's edge, the disappearances were not just isolated tragedies, they were a confirmation of a haunting presence that had always lingered. For years, they had reported strange, unexplainable phenomena that intensified after the vanishes on moonless nights. Some would hear the distinct sound of echoing footsteps, slowly and deliberately circling their homes. Yet a peek outside would reveal nothing but empty darkness. Others reported the sound of someone whispering just outside their windows. The whispers were not in any familiar language or local dialect. They were guttural, ancient, and utterly alien. Perhaps most unnerving were the lights. Strange bobbing lights, like someone carrying a lantern, would be seen moving erratically deep between the trees, where no path existed and no person should be. But the scariest part, the part that kept people locked in their homes after dark, was the voice. On certain nights, a faint voice would drift from the forest, calling for help. It was a voice that sounded chillingly, unmistakably like one of the missing victims, crying out in desperation. A son, a husband, a friend. Yet, when any brave or grief-stricken soul would dare to answer, to call back into the oppressive darkness, the forest would become instantly and completely silent, as if holding its breath. Only one person ever returned from the clutches of that forest. In Arling, a man named PHC, a seasoned collector of rare medicinal herbs, ventured into the woods, confident in his knowledge of the terrain. He went missing for 5 long days. The village prepared for the worst, another name to be whispered alongside VA and Hai. But on the morning of the 6th day, PHC stumbled back into the village. He was a shadow of his former self, barefoot, his clothes torn, his body shaking with a violent, uncontrollable tremor. He was mumbling, repeating only one cryptic and terrifying sentence over and over again. "Don't look at its face. Don't look at its face." He was rushed to a doctor, who found something baffling. Vuk had no injuries, no scratches, and strangely, he was not dehydrated or malnourished. It was as if he hadn't been lost and struggling for survival in the wilderness at all, but had been somewhere else entirely, a place outside the normal rules of time and physical need. When he finally recovered enough to speak coherently, he told a story that defied all logic. "At night," he began, his voice still trembling, "something followed me. It didn't walk on 2 legs. It glided over the ground without a sound, and every time I tried to sleep I could feel it crouch down beside me, just waiting. waiting for me to open my eyes when pressed by the horrified villagers to describe what the creature looked like, what face he was warning them about. PHC refused to answer, a primal fear seizing him again. But before he fell silent, he said one last thing that plunged the community into a new depth of despair. I was not alone in there. After multiple inexplicable vanishings, local authorities could no longer dismiss the events as local folklore. They launched a large-scale official search operation, determined to find answers using modern technology. They set up a perimeter and deployed teams armed with state-of-the-art equipment. The results were not just fruitless, they were profoundly disturbing. Motion-activated cameras placed deep inside the forest malfunctioned one by one. Their fully charged batteries drained instantly, as if some immense energy field was shorting them out. GPS devices, meant to map the area, went insane, their signals spinning wildly or showing their users' locations miles away from where they stood. Most chillingly, some of the few cameras that managed to record for a few seconds before dying captured distorted, elongated human-like shapes moving with impossible speed behind the trees in the grainy footage. Even the highly trained search dogs, usually fearless and eager, refused to enter certain parts of the forest. They would stop dead at an invisible line, whining and growling at something their handlers could not see. One officer, a hardened veteran, later filed a report that was quickly buried. He wrote of hearing distinct footsteps behind him, but when he spun around, weapon drawn, there was nothing. The footsteps, he claimed, were now coming from directly above him, in the treetops. The official operation was concluded with no results, no bodies, and no explanations. Over the years, people have desperately tried to explain the disappearances. Could the victims have simply gotten lost in the vast, untamed wilderness? This seems unlikely. Why would experienced woodsmen vanish without leaving a single footprint? Why have no bodies ever been recovered? Perhaps wild animals were responsible, but a tiger or bear attack would leave behind a clear and violent scene, not a clean, traceless disappearance. Some have suggested illegal kidnappings or foul play. This theory crumbles when considering the circumstances. Many of the victims vanished within seconds, in close proximity to others, making a silent human-led abduction virtually impossible. This leaves a final, terrifying possibility: supernatural forces. Some locals remain convinced that Tirnach, the vengeful spirits of those who died a violent death, are luring humans deeper into the woods to their doom. Others have a more modern theory that the forest is a liminal zone, a place where the boundary between our world and another is precariously thin. So what really happened to the people who vanished in the Northwest Forest? Were they taken by vengeful spirits, as the legends claim? Did they accidentally step through a doorway into another dimension, lost in a place just beyond our perception? Or were they swallowed by something ancient, something primal, something the human mind cannot, and perhaps should not, ever understand? One thing is certain: the forest is still there, silent, patient, waiting. And every year, when the mists hang low and the nights grow long, it seems someone else disappears.